The Supreme Court may soon be tackling one of the most persistent and persistently baffling issues of ongoing sexual discrimination in the federal government today. And this time it may actually favor men? Let's talk about it. I'm Nick Rekieta of Rekieta Law, a small law firm in central Minnesota. I'm a lawyer. I'm also a legal and political commentator on YouTube and on Odyssey. Wherever you're watching, hit that like button, hit subscribe, and go ahead and turn on your notifications so you don't miss any videos. Okay, yes, there's an ongoing case of sexual discrimination that's been in act in the United States from the federal government for a very, very long time. And it has withstood the test of time. It is, of course, the Selective Services Act. If you don't know what the Selective Services Act, you must not be a male in this country who is 18 or older. Because if you were a male in this country who's 18 or older, you know that you had to register for a military draft should our government ever decide to call you to war. And you've also probably know that none of your female friends were required to do the same thing. Only men have been able to be drafted into the United States military service since the inception of the Selective Services Act. It required it. So that is potentially going to the Supreme Court. The people asking for the change are shockingly a men's group and more shockingly the ACLU. Yes, the ACLU is actually on the side saying, nope, this needs to be expanded to women. And guess what, ladies? It's coming. It's coming. It's been a long time coming. Okay, so here's the article. It's from CNN Politics. It'll be down in the description if you want to read it, but we're going to go ahead and just get the main points here. The Supreme Court will decide as early as this week whether to hear a constitutional challenge to the male-only registration requirement for the draft filed by a group called the National Coalition for Men. The group is asking for the justices to reconsider a 1981 decision that upheld the Military Selective Services Act, under which men, but not women, are required to register for the draft. Key to the court's ruling, and think about how different the times are now. Like, think about how far we've come. And you can take that however you want, but this is amazing wording here. Key to the court's ruling, which was decided by a court made up of all men, was its observation that, quote, women as a group, unlike men as a group, are not eligible for combat. Whew. Imagine that being said today. Like, me quoting it has me nervous. You cannot have this opinion anymore. And the entire Supreme Court in 1981 had this opinion, and that was largely decided as the way it should be. Now, the Selective Services Act is kind of interesting because one of the key issues with women's suffrage, right, the woman's right to vote, was the fact that they were not eligible for things like the draft. They were not in the same type of civil responsibilities that men had to undertake at the time of women's suffrage passage. Now, a lot of those have gone away. This one has persisted forever, but that was one of the key sticking points is women wanted to vote, but they didn't want to be drafted into the military. Now, of course, we're in kind of upside down land from then, and women actually do want to be draftable into the military, presumably because none of them ever had. I don't know why anyone would want to be drafted into a country's military, but they do. And this goes hand in hand with the ongoing themes of women having increasing access to combat roles and frontline roles in the military. And it's controversial because I know it's scary to say, there are biological differences between men and women, which might make some of them more suitable to certain physical tasks than others, and our military has determined that male physical suitability as a group is different than female suitability as a group for things like infantry combat. But that's just how it's been for a long time, and that I find those policies to be very, very hateful and very short-sighted. But that being said, now that is changing. Women are pushing to be in these combat-oriented roles, and they are largely gaining access, although there is some resistance at the level of physical fitness standards and stuff like that. There's still some conflict being worked out there, but we're talking about a nation in crisis needing to draft people into the military, and now people want women on board. Again, I don't know why any woman would want to be drafted, but let's read their reasoning. That has changed in the decades since. David Cole, the American Civil Liberties Union, which is representing the National Coalition for Men, has asked the Supreme Court to take up the case, even highlighting what it might have meant to the justice's late colleague Ruth Bader Ginsburg, because she was a big champion. Okay, here we go. In court papers, the ACLU argues that the male-only military draft is unlawful sex discrimination. I agree. I do. And that the registration requirement, quote, has no legitimate purpose and cannot withstand the exacting scrutiny sex-based laws require. Now, sex-based laws tend to fall into something called intermediate scrutiny, which is they have to further a legitimate government purpose, and they have to be tailored to advance that government purpose. In short, it has to be a legitimate interest of the government. It doesn't go all the way up to strict scrutiny, which would require a compelling government interest and the least restrictive means to accomplish that interest. And it's not down at rational basis where it just has to be rationally related to a government interest, and it has to somehow further the achievement of those ends. It's in the middle of those. It's in the middle of those, because when the courts were developing the scrutiny tests, they recognized that issues of gender are not the same as issues of race, because pretty specifically, men and women are quite different as groups. Quite different. And so recognizing that difference as groups, they said we need a little bit more flexibility than the other class-based distinctions like race, for example, or national origin or religion. Those types of things. And I think it had a lot to do with stuff like the Military Services Act, but that's okay. Here's the interesting thing, I think. It says, by burdening only men while excluding women, the Military Services Act sends a message that women are not vital to the defense of the country. I actually don't agree with this from a how do we say this? From a practical sense. I actually don't think that is the correct interpretation of it, but it's a great legal argument, and it is exactly the type of thing they're looking for when examining whether or not these laws should instill some sort of equality. Now, bafflingly, the Biden administration is urging the court not to take up this case. They do not want this case taken up. I don't know why. Everybody should want equality across the genders, especially when it regards the military draft. That is what we want. We want equality between men and women, but the Biden administration is saying no, because Congress is looking at this and examining the Selective Services Act, and he's saying that Congress may decide to act on that, and any act by the court would be premature. However, I disagree with this entirely, and without a hint of joke in this. I disagree with what Biden is saying, because if it is sex-based discrimination and that sex-based discrimination is unconstitutional, then we need the court to rule on it, not Congress to pass a law, because presumably then Congress would go ahead and just be able to pass a law saying the opposite in the future. And if this is the way our Constitution is supposed to operate, with equality between men and women on rights and responsibilities, then we need to have equality between men and women on rights and responsibilities. That's just how it should be. But that's my opinion. Why don't you guys drop a comment down below? Tell me what you think about women in the military. And more importantly to me, what do you think about women being drafted into the military? It's a hot button issue. It has been for a while, and times are a-changing. Until next time, by the way, thanks for watching. Peace. Peace.